John Heilemann is managing editor of Bloomberg Politics and co-host of The Circus on Showtime, a division of CBS, and he's good enough to join me now to discuss the weekend that was in politics. John, in Bedminster, the goings-on. Considering the campaign that we saw, is this the transition you expected?
No, because I don't think that, I mean, look, just be candid about it. I don't think you, me, 99% of people in the business, whether they're Republican, Democrat, in the media, in the political game, and in the Trump campaign, assumed that Trump was not going to win. So I think it was hard for anybody to envision what the transition would be, including people inside Trump Tower who had not put very much time, effort, or energy into building this transition, which is why I'm trying to always be clear about there are two different elements to the transition, right? One element is picking high-level appointments. Mm-hmm. On that front, they are not behind by any historic, in terms of historic analogies, precedents, they're not behind at all. In terms of the mechanics of getting synced up with the outgoing administration and getting ready to fill 4,000 jobs, they're way behind. And we saw that herky-jerky kind of first week because I don't think they really did not. It's not that I don't think it. They were not ready to move into governing mode. So that is that's a much harder job than making the appointments, filling those 4,000 jobs. At the level of the appointments, I'm not surprised at all to see Trump conducting this thing in the way he is because of his penchant for the theatrical, because he is a reality show star, and proudly so. He's putting a show on now, and whereas most presidents in the past have wanted to do all this in secret and wanted to do this all in a very confidential way and didn't want to have names leak out who they weren't going to ultimately select. Sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. You think about Obama, with the secret meeting with Bob Gates. You think about the way the Hillary Clinton negotiations were handled, also in secret to a large extent. Trump's not like that. He wants to make a show out of this. And so I'm not surprised about that at all.
His top level advisors, his cabinet picks thus far, he is rewarding, it would seem, loyalty.
Yes.
First and foremost.
Yes. And they're very, I think they're yes, loyalty first and foremost so far. And very hardline ideologically, right? And I think there's a lot of questions about Trump, exactly where he is. In many respects, as we all pointed out, he was not a Republican for most of his life. Some of the positions that he ran on things like trade, for instance, he is not at all a doctrinaire Republican. Doesn't care about entitlements, doesn't care about the deficit. In some respects, he's very conservative, right? So far, the picks have been very hardline ideologically because they've been largely in the national security area. So, Sessions is domestic and foreign in some sense by Attorney General, very hard line. Bannon, very hard line. Pompeo, very hard line. Michael Flynn, really hard line. So ideologically, really hard line, and all really profound loyalists, and all old white men. Which, again, I think merit is the only thing that matters in these instances. But as we all know, there are a lot of people who are qualified minorities and qualified women. And the only reason it matters at this point is that obviously large numbers of non-white Americans are really worried about what's about to happen. And so I think these picks have caused them to be more concerned rather than less concerned. There's still a lot of jobs to fill. We'll see.
There is one big job to fill still, Secretary of State.
Big.
We had heard through last week, our Major Garrett reported that essentially the Mitt Romney meeting was cosmetic. It was meant to perhaps suggest something, but really other than that, it was not meant as a legitimate audition, if you will, for Secretary of State. You are hearing differently.
I think Romney is being considered seriously. I think there are lots of questions about whether the job can be constructed in a way that would allow Romney to take it. I think he's certainly really interested in it. Mm-hmm. He did not enter into this meeting in the sense that he thought it was cosmetic. And for him, people in Romney's world let it be known to the Trump people that they would consider a job, but there were very few that he would consider. I think he probably would have considered state and treasury essentially. And frankly, in some ways, he's better cut out for state than he is for treasury. Because his financial knowledge, strangely, is not as high as people expect from Romney in terms of the workings of the markets. I think the Trump people have floated some people that were obviously cosmetic. The Nikki Haley trial balloon was obviously made up. But I think Romney's in the game.
So what would that mean then for Rudy Giuliani, considering the fact that loyalty, again, it had appeared, was the thing?
Well, it would mean that Rudy might have to consider taking another job in the administration. This is kind of one of those things, Trump is very strong-willed, right? There are two things about how Rudy handled this, I think, that did not do him any favors. One was he basically talked about the fact that he came out publicly and essentially said he turned down the idea of being Attorney General and that he only really wanted the State Department. And he got a lot of attention. Trump does not like it when his loyalists or anybody else around him gets too much press attention. And that is just not a way in which almost anybody, any president or president-elect, likes to have people who are trying to get jobs with them behave, kind of saying, I've ruled out certain things, I've told, like, it's basically, Giuliani suggested accurately that he issued an ultimatum to Donald Trump about what job he wanted. I don't think that sat well with Trump. And I don't think that would sit well with any president-elect. I don't think it sat well with him, and I think Rudy did himself no favors in terms of how he handled it. You notice Sessions did not do that. Pompeo did not do that. Flynn did not do that. They were not all over television talking about what job they wanted or what job they expected or what jobs they wouldn't take. It's that's a way to blow your loyalty chips pretty quick if you.
It'd be very fascinating to see that. All right, good chat here on this one. Hamilton Gate.
Yeah.
Against the greater backdrop of a decision made to settle the lawsuits regarding Trump University, a $25 million settlement made. We did not speak of that really over this weekend. Instead, we talked about Mike Pence's attendance at Hamilton and what ensued thereafter. What'd you make of it all?
Well, I think we really should focus on Donald Trump's business empire and the potential conflicts of interest that it poses for him as president. It is easy to complain about. It's an unprecedented situation for someone this rich with this many international business holdings and domestic business holdings to become president of the United States. How to handle that is a challenging thing. It's easy for the left just to complain about it and cite the conflicts of interest. But Trump's going to be president of the United States. So there are solutions. The Trump administration says it's thinking about how to handle it. I think we need to keep an intense focus on this question because it would be a really bad thing for the president of the United States to be in a position where foreign policy, where the perception was that foreign policy, economic policy, was being undermined by his own profit-making motivations. So we should be focused on that. I think, though, that it's natural that something like this Hamilton thing would also consume a large part of the conversation because it is, relatable to a lot of Americans in a way that a lot of these more complicated topics are not. And so I don't have a problem with the notion. I think one should not crowd out the other as a conversation topic. We should be talking about both. And the Hamilton thing is interesting. I'm not surprised that is what the people behind that show decided to do. I thought the things that were written by Lin-Manuel Miranda and the others for the current Aaron Burr to say we're respectful, we're not harassment in any way. I think it was really unpleasant that the audience booed Mike Pence when he arrived in the theater. I think that's rude. They're within their rights to do it, but I think it's just rude. I think there's an interesting question about whether they maybe should have asked Pence to have that conversation backstage rather than having it in full public view. That's an interesting question. Some have suggested maybe they should have gone about it in that way. But the one thing that I think is ridiculous is that the president-elect has reacted to it in the way he has. And some people say he's trying to distract attention from other stories. I think he's just impetuous. He's attacked the New York Times. Everybody who criticizes him now, he's using his Twitter feed to punch back in a way that I think is totally undignified and suggests kind of an implied with the power of the presidency, as opposed to being just a mere candidate, to be singling out critics for opprobrium and to demanding apologies on the part of your critics is a dangerous kind of potentially problematic road to be down. We don't want our presidents trying to silence dissent. We want them to tolerate it. They have a big megaphone. They can speak for themselves. They don't need to try to shut down people who respectfully and unrespectfully disagree with them.
Very specifically without precedent, to be sure. John Heilemann, as always.